Hello, my name is Kyle Cathell, and I'd like to talk to you today about genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. I'd like to assert that genetically modifying organisms as food sources is ethically positive, and I have 3 reasons to support this. First, we've been genetically modifying foods for thousands of years with significant benefit to human populations. Second, GMOs are genetically superior to their unaltered counterparts and can benefit people in a variety of ways. And third, with rising population levels, we need a practical alternative to current farming techniques. I'd like to start by defining a GMO as an organism whose DNA has been altered by genetic engineering techniques. The most common misconception these days is that this genetic altering is only occurring in laboratories, but really it brings me to my first claim that we've been genetically modifying foods for thousands of years with significant benefit to human populations. Crossbreeding of crops was necessary for hunter-gatherer civilizations to evolve into what we call sessile agricultural civilizations. And by modifying wild-type crops, they were allowed to settle in one place and survive on what they could grow rather than what they could gather. Farmers modify the DNA of their foods simply by crossbreeding crops. Breeding techniques allow us to create genetically unique crops and are capable of growing in a variety of environments that they ordinarily might not be able to grow in. A perfect example of this, and something that you're all familiar with even though you may not realize it, is bananas. Wild bananas are filled with seeds and they maintain a green skin color, but years of breeding techniques have created bananas that are larger, are seedless, and are a much more agreeable yellow color that we know today. These bananas are grown to suit our needs rather than what has been naturally selected for them. Many of the foods that we eat today are genetically modified through crossbreeding or experimentation in a laboratory. That's really kind of a misnomer, and what we really understand is that all of the foods that we eat today have been genetically modified, whether it's been in a laboratory or in the field through crossbreeding. According to the EPA, corn is the primary crop grown in the US, but it can no longer grow without human aid. Genetically modifying corn can result in crops that are less vulnerable to disease and pests, and we can also produce larger yields of corn with less nutrient input required. My second claim is that GMOs are genetically superior in comparison to their unaltered counterparts. We can alter a crop's DNA to make it resistant to infection or destruction by pests. Altered foods often require less pesticides to maintain, which has a very far-reaching effect on the environment. According to the National Institute of Health Scientists, pesticides often end up in water runoff from farms, and this runoff can be carried hundreds of miles from their source. The way pesticides work is that they inhibit the growth of exoskeletons of arthropods, arthropods being predominantly insects, and these are the pests most common for crops. And so by altering the ability to grow an exoskeleton, you decrease the chance that a pest will infect a crop. But if you're carrying these pesticides hundreds of miles away from the problem area, you're affecting organisms that aren't supposed to be affected. And this can be very detrimental to the environment that they live in and can have far-reaching impacts that we may not even be able to understand. GMOs also have significant health benefits, and a very common example today is transgenic bananas. Transgenic meaning cross-gene, or genes that have been carried over from one organism to the other. Transgenic bananas are being produced that carry vaccines and may be used to immunize large groups of people at a time. So we can use these to not only feed groups of people, especially in third world countries, where we're ethically morally obligated to help, but we can also immunize these people against a variety of diseases simply by growing them. We don't need needles, we don't need professionals who are capable of carrying out vaccinations. We simply feed people. And my third claim is that the world's population is on the rise and we need a practical alternative to our current farming techniques. Not creating an answer to food shortages and starvation in third world countries is unethical. GMOs provide us with the ability to produce crops en masse and in a variety of conditions that they might not ordinarily be able to grow in. An example of this is that genes taken from mangrove trees, which grow in swamps which are high in salinity or salt content, these genes have been taken and placed in tobacco plants that can now survive in highly increased salinity or salt concentrations. Tobacco, while not an edible crop, is just a stepping stone to what we hope will be able to be used for crops like potatoes and wheat, where they can now grow in areas where they couldn't grow in before, like deserts or salt beds. Because GMOs are so resistant to natural predators, we can grow more and larger crops with larger yields to benefit large populations. We may be nearing the carrying capacity for human growth, and alternative food sources will have to be looked at immediately if we want to combat food shortages and starvation. The widespread famine that is sure to come will be debilitating if we don't act now and modify the genetic code of our food. Thank you.
All right, Kyle, let me start with the things that went really well. I thought that you had an excellent preview of the structure of the speech. It's organized in the body of the speech. You explain everything very clearly. Your delivery is really solid. You're forceful, you're clear and easy to listen to. You're looking at the audience. You develop a great deal of ethos from doing that. Now let me point out a couple of things that are really problematic. Your proposition is phrased as a value claim rather than a claim of fact. I think it would be easily modified into a claim of fact, but you said it right in the proposition, that it is ethically positive for us to do that. That's exactly what a value claim is. Your third point is really a justification for that value claim also, so that kind of reinforces the notion that a value issue is going on here. I think you could simply argue that genetically modified organisms have substantial advantages or are going to substantially improve the world, and that would be a claim of fact, and you could leave out the ethical issue. The truth is that you barely talk about that ethical issue on the third point, and it comes down to neglecting people would be unethical in your view, and that's about as far as the discussion goes on it. So I think that changing some of the language would be an easy fix on this. The other big issue that is facing here is that your examples, you only have a couple of examples that you're giving us, and none of them are cited, and outside of the examples, everything else is an explanation, similar to what we just had in the earlier speech, where we're getting an explanation of a concept without proof of it. I don't want to sound too negative on this, but it sounds a little bit like a brochure from Monsanto. In other words, here's all the stuff that's supposed to be done by genetically modified organisms, and I'm going, okay, well, where's the proof on this? I know that you found out about some of this information from doing research, but none of that research is cited in the presentation. It's just very, very thin on that. We've got a couple of banana references as examples. The one place that I got a source citation was from the EPA on the pesticide use. I thought that was pretty good. And there was another quote that dealt with corn and how difficult it is to grow without having some modification. But other than that, the source citations were sketchy, so you need to be more on top of it. I think you've got the goods on a good speech here, but similar to the last speech, we're missing the data sourcing that you need to have in an argument, especially an oral argument like this. All right, thank you.